When Jonathan Jack Sterling saw Emily kneeling on the gleaming marble floor of Sterling Manor, scrubbing with all her might, something deep inside him just broke. It wasn't mere pity. It wasn't just discomfort. It was something infinitely more profound, like a chord resonating from the very depths of his being. It felt as though a part of his soul, dormant for ages, had abruptly snapped awake. A voice, not his own, whispered almost inaudibly, "Finally, I've found you, my queen." He shook his head, trying to clear the cobwebs. He must be working too hard. Billionaires simply didn't have time for romantic fantasies about the help, about the housekeepers. But his eyes stubbornly refused to leave her. There was something in the way she moved, something in the elegant curve of her back as she labored, something in the quiet dignity with which she performed what some might consider a menial task. It was as if cleaning floors was merely a disguise, as if she were waiting for something or someone. If you've ever felt an instant connection with a complete stranger, as if you knew them from another life, another time, then this video is going to change everything you thought you knew about coincidences, about fate. Sterling Manor stood proudly atop a gentle rise overlooking Charleston, South Carolina. Built in the early 1700s, it was one of the oldest and most valuable properties in the entire region. Its manicured gardens sprawled across acres. Its grand halls housed priceless works of art worth fortunes. And its cellar, well, no one ever spoke about the cellar. The Sterling family had an unwritten rule, passed down through generations. What's buried stays buried. Jack inherited it all at 28, when his parents tragically died in a plane crash. Now, at 38, he was one of the wealthiest men in the South. He commanded an empire of real estate, tech, and agriculture. He was feared in boardrooms, respected in business circles, envied in the society pages, and utterly, completely alone. 3 failed marriages, no children, no real connection with another human being, except for his great-aunt Eleanor, who, at 92, lived in the east wing of the mansion like a living relic of a bygone era. She was the only person in the world that Jack truly loved, and perhaps also the only one he slightly feared. Emily arrived at Sterling Manor on a Monday morning. She was 29 years old, a single mother to a 4-year-old son named Ethan, and carried a past that no one bothered to ask about. The domestic employment agency sent her as a temporary replacement. The previous housekeeper had abruptly quit, claiming to have seen strange things in the mansion. Shadows that moved on their own, voices speaking in languages no one could identify, and a constant feeling of being watched by the portraits hanging on the ancient walls. Emily didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in getting paid. And Sterling Manor paid triple the going rate. With that kind of money, she could finally move Ethan out of their cramped apartment and give him a future worth fighting for. Ghosts or no ghosts, she was willing to face anything for her son. In her first week, she quickly learned the routine. Wake up at 5, brew the coffee, clean the main halls before Jack came downstairs at 8. Never look him directly in the eye, never speak unless spoken to, and never, ever, under any circumstances, enter the East Wing where Great-Aunt Eleanor resided, or the cellar. For the first few days, Jack completely ignored her. She was practically invisible to him, just another cog in the machine that kept his life running smoothly. He passed her in the hallways without even registering her presence. Until that fateful Thursday, it was pouring rain, one of those torrential downpours that could quickly turn Charleston into its own little Venice. Jack was working in his office when he heard a commotion coming from the kitchen, a muffled scream, the sound of something shattering, and then silence. He didn't know why he stood up. He didn't know why his feet carried him so quickly towards the kitchen. He didn't know why his heart was pounding in his chest as if his life depended on what he would find. When he reached the kitchen, he saw Emily holding her right hand tightly against her chest. Scalding hot water splattered across the floor. The kettle lay broken and discarded, and silent tears streamed down her face as she bit her lip, trying to stifle a cry of pain. Any other employer would have called the head of household staff, would have ordered someone to take her to the hospital, would have returned to their office without a second thought. But Jack did something that surprised them both. He took her hand. The instant his fingers touched Emily's burned skin, the world seemed to stop. Literally, stop. The sound of the rain outside faded away. The light in the room seemed to shift. And for a fraction of a second, maybe less, Jack saw something impossible. He saw chains, thick, rusty iron chains. He saw raw, chafed wrists marked by metal. He saw dark blood trickling down sun-kissed skin. And he heard a voice, his own voice, but different, with an accent he didn't recognize, saying, "I will free you, I promise, even if it kills me." Emily snatched her hand back as if she'd been burned. Her eyes, normally downcast and submissive, met his for the first time. And Jack saw something in that gaze that chilled him to the bone. Recognition. Not the kind of recognition of someone you'd met at a cocktail party. The kind of recognition of someone who had found someone they had been searching for their entire life, or for many lives. "You saw it too, didn't you?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. It wasn't a question. Jack stumbled backward. One step, then another. His rational mind screamed that this was insane, that he was exhausted, that he needed a vacation, that he was probably developing some kind of psychotic break brought on by corporate stress. Billionaires don't have visions. Billionaires don't feel mystical connections with housekeepers. Billionaires are practical men who build empires and count numbers. "What was that?" he asked, but his voice trembled. "Nothing, Mr. Sterling. I apologize for the inconvenience. I'll clean up the mess." And just as quickly as it had begun, the moment passed. Emily retreated back into invisibility. Jack returned to his office. But something had changed. Something had been awakened. And they both knew, even without admitting it, that their lives would never be the same. If this story is already affecting you in some way, know that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface. What comes next is going to leave you speechless. In the following weeks, Jack did something he had never done before. He began to observe an employee. Not in an inappropriate way, he justified to himself. Just professional curiosity. He was a businessman after all. Analyzing people was part of his job. He was simply trying to understand why this particular woman evoked such strange and unnerving sensations within him. But the more he watched, the more disturbed he became. Emily moved through the mansion as if she knew every nook and cranny. She knew exactly where each object belonged, even the ones that hadn't been used in decades. She avoided certain spots on the floor as if there was something about them that deeply unsettled her. And once, Jack caught Emily staring at an old portrait in the gallery, with an expression that could only be described as longing. The portrait was of an unknown woman. There wasn't a plaque identifying who she was, just the date in the corner, 1651. The woman in the portrait was white, European, dressed in the attire of colonial gentry, nothing like Emily. But something in her gaze, as she stared at that painting, sent a chill down Jack's spine. "Do you know her?" he asked, appearing behind her. Emily jumped, clearly startled. "No, sir, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be here in this wing. I'll get back to work." "Who is she?" Jack insisted, pointing to the portrait. "I don't know, sir. I don't know the history of your family." She was lying. Jack could recognize lies. He'd built an empire on the ability to detect when someone wasn't being honest. But he decided not to press it. Not yet. That night, he went to the study of Sterling Manor, where the family's historical archives were kept. The Sterlings were obsessed with genealogy. Every birth, marriage, and death was documented in books that dated back to the family's arrival in America in the 17th century. Jack had never been interested in it before. History was for professors and archaeologists. He was a man of the present and the future, but now he wanted to know. He needed to know. He spent hours leafing through yellowed documents, dusty diaries, letters faded by time, and at some point, close to midnight, he found something that made his blood run cold. It was a list of family property dated 1650, and among horses, land, and cattle, there was another category. A category that Jack knew existed in the history of the South, but that he'd never confronted directly in the history of his own family: slaves. The list contained 27 names, 27 human beings who were treated as property by his ancestors. Jack felt nauseous, angry, ashamed, all at once. His fortune, his estate, everything he was, had been built literally on the bodies of enslaved people. And then he saw a name on the list that made his heart stop. Emily. It was there, written in faded brown ink. Emily, acquired in 1649. Origin, West Africa. Estimated age, 17 years. Mark, crown on the nape of her neck. Note, claims to be a princess. Value, very high. Jack reread that line a dozen times. It had to be a coincidence. Emily was a common name. The crown mark was, well, he didn't even know if the present-day Emily had any mark at all. He was letting his imagination run wild. But then, another entry caught his attention, further down on the same list. Jonathan, born on the property in 1632, age 18 years. Note, rebellious, attempted escape in 1648, punished with 50 lashes, special attention due to the connection with the African Emily. Jack dropped the document as if it were on fire. This was too much. It was insane. It was impossible. He was reading about people who lived almost 400 years ago, people who happened to have the same names as he and the housekeeper who worked in his home. Coincidence, just a coincidence. But a voice inside him, the same voice that had whispered, "I finally found you, my queen," that first day, now whispered something else. "You know it's not a coincidence. You always knew. You were just afraid to remember." Jack didn't sleep that night, nor the nights that followed. 3 days later, something happened that changed everything. It was late morning. Jack was working in his study when he heard voices coming from the East Wing. Loud voices, agitated voices. One of them was definitely Great Aunt Eleanor's. The other he didn't immediately recognize, but there was something familiar about it. When he reached the East Wing, he found a scene he never expected to see. Great Aunt Eleanor was standing, something she rarely did without help at 92 years old. Her eyes, normally clouded by age, were wide and focused, and in her hands, trembling, was an antique locket that Jack had never seen before. But the most shocking thing was the person Great Aunt Eleanor was looking at. Emily, the housekeeper, was standing in the doorway of the East Wing, clearly as confused as Jack. She was holding a bucket and a cloth, probably had entered by mistake, thinking it was permitted to clean there. Her face showed regret and fear of having broken a rule, but Great Aunt Eleanor didn't seem angry. She seemed terrified and fascinated, and something else that Jack couldn't quite identify. "It's impossible." The old woman's voice came out shaky. "It's completely impossible. You can't be here. You should be dead. You are dead. I saw it in the records. I read the history. You died in 1650. Aunt Eleanor, what are you talking about?" Jack approached worriedly. "Look at her." Great Aunt Eleanor pointed at Emily. "Look at her closely. Look at her neck, the mark, the crown mark. It's her. It's the princess. She's returned after all these years." And before anyone could react, Great Aunt Eleanor staggered and fainted into Jack's arms, still clutching the antique locket as if her life depended on it. In the silence that followed, Jack looked at Emily, and for the first time, really looked, and saw what his great aunt had seen. There, on the nape of Emily's neck, partially covered by her pinned-up hair, was a birthmark, a mark in an unmistakable shape, a crown, the same shape described in the documents from 1650. The mark of the African princess, the mark that identified Emily as royalty in her homeland before being captured and enslaved. The same mark that was now on the skin of a housekeeper who cleaned the Stirling Manor built on the very grounds where her ancestors were held captive. Jack felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. The world as he knew it was crumbling, and in its place arose something much larger, much older, and much scarier than any business deal he had ever faced, because some truths cannot be ignored, some debts cannot be paid with money, and some souls do not rest until they find what they have been searching for centuries. What would you do in Jack's place? Would you have the courage to discover the truth, or would you prefer to live in ignorance? Comment your answer below. Great Aunt Eleanor was taken to her room. The family doctor was called. Jack spent the night by her bedside, waiting for her to wake up, needing answers that only she could give. Emily was sent away for a week. Paid leave, they told her. Jack couldn't look at her, couldn't be in the same room without feeling like the floor was going to give way beneath him. He needed time to process, time to understand, time to decide if Jack Stirling was losing his mind, or if the impossible was somehow real. But distance didn't help. On the contrary, the more time he spent away from Emily, the more Jack thought about her. He dreamed about her, dreams so vivid that he'd wake up sweating with tears in his eyes, and with words in a language he didn't know on the tip of his tongue. In the dreams, he wasn't a billionaire. He was young, strong. His skin was darker, tanned by the sun. His back bore the scars of whippings, and his eyes, always his eyes, were fixed on a woman of breathtaking beauty who worked in the fields but walked like a queen. Her name was Emily, and she was everything. "This is impossible," Jack repeated to himself every time he woke up. "I'm a businessman. I don't believe in past lives. I don't believe in soulmates. I don't believe in anything that can't be proven in a courtroom or in an Excel spreadsheet." But then, why did his heart ache when he thought of her? Why did he feel such overwhelming guilt when he remembered the crown-shaped birthmark on the back of Emily's neck? Why? Every time he closed his eyes, did he see chains, blood, and a promise made at dawn? "I will free you," he'd hear himself saying, "even if it kills me." And on the third day, Great Aunt Eleanor finally woke up. She was weak but lucid, and when she saw Jack sitting beside her bed, the first thing she said was, "You found the documents, didn't you? You know about them, about the Jonathan of 1650, about the princess." Jack swallowed hard. "Great Aunt Eleanor, what do you know about this?" "Everything, my dear boy. I know everything. It's time you knew too. But promise me one thing first. Promise me that what I tell you won't make you run away. Promise me that this time you'll do things differently. Promise me you won't repeat the mistake." "What mistake, Great Aunt Eleanor? What are you talking about?" Great Aunt Eleanor closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them again, there were tears in them. "Bring the chest," she said. "The chest that's in my closet, the one no one has ever opened. It's time." Jack had never seen the chest before. It was small, made of dark wood, with iron fittings rusted with age. It must have been at least 200 years old, maybe more. When he placed it on Great Aunt Eleanor's bed, his hands were trembling. "This chest," Great Aunt Eleanor began, "has been passed down from mother to daughter in my family for generations. My mother gave it to me, her mother gave it to her, and so on, going back to 1651. Do you know what's inside?" Jack shook his head. "The true story of the Stirling family. The story that has never been told. The story that explains why this Stirling Manor is cursed. Why no Stirling ever finds happiness in love. Why we all carry a guilt we can't name." Great Aunt Eleanor opened the chest with a key she wore on a necklace hidden under her clothes. Inside, there was only one object, a diary bound in leather, with yellowed pages, and an elegant but faded handwriting. This diary, Great Aunt Eleanor continued, was written by Catherine Sterling, wife of the first patriarch of the family, the woman in the portrait your housekeeper kept staring at, and it tells the story of two enslaved people who changed the destiny of this house forever. Jack took the diary with reverence. The pages were fragile, some illegible, but as he began to read, the world around him disappeared. Only that story existed, that truth, that horror. The diary recounted that in 1649, a slave ship arrived in Charleston Harbor with a special cargo. Among the enslaved people, there was a young woman who was different. She didn't lower her eyes, she didn't bow her head, even in chains, even wounded, even having lost everything. She maintained a dignity that frightened the traders. When they asked who she was, she replied in surprisingly good English, "I am Emily, daughter of King Obafemi of the Oyo Kingdom. I am a princess, and one day, when my people learn what you have done, there won't be a stone left standing in your lands." The traders laughed. They sold her for a high price to the Sterling family, and that's how Princess Emily arrived at the plantation. That would one day become the Sterling manor where Jack lived now. Catherine Sterling, the wife of the patriarch, was fascinated by the new enslaved woman. She had never seen anyone with such presence, such intelligence, such inner strength, against her husband's wishes. She treated Emily with unusual kindness. She allowed her to work inside the house instead of in the fields. She taught her to read and write better, and little by little, she developed a fondness for her that she didn't know how to name. But Catherine also noticed something else. She noticed the glances between Emily and another enslaved person born on the property, a young man named Jonathan, strong, intelligent, rebellious. He had already tried to escape once and bore the scars on his back, but his eyes shone in a different way when they looked at the African princess, and her eyes did the same. Jack stopped reading. His hands were shaking so much he could barely hold the diary. "Continue," Great Aunt Eleanor said. "You need to know the rest." The next pages of the diary described what Catherine witnessed over months. The secret meetings between Emily and Jonathan, the whispered conversations in dark corners, the promises made under the moon, and finally, the decision that would seal their fate. Jonathan had planned an escape. He knew secret trails through the woods. He had contacts in distant maroon communities. If they could reach them, they would be free. They could live together, build a life, have children, be human instead of property. The escape was set for the night of the new moon. Catherine discovered it by accident, overhearing a conversation she shouldn't have. And she faced an impossible dilemma. Denouncing the enslaved people meant condemning them to death. Remaining silent meant betraying her husband. She chose silence. But someone else knew. Someone who didn't have the same compassion. The fugitives were captured before they reached the woods, brought back in chains, and what happened next made Catherine Sterling carry guilt for the rest of her life. Jonathan was executed in the central courtyard of the plantation. In front of all the other enslaved people, in front of Emily, they forced her to watch while the man she loved was tortured and killed slowly. And when it was all over, when Jonathan's body lay on the ground, soaked in blood, Emily looked at the patriarch Sterling and said words that would be remembered for generations. "You killed his body, but his soul is mine, and we will return. We will return as many times as it takes, and when we return, the roles will be reversed. I swear it by my royal lineage. I swear it by the blood of my ancestors. What you have done here today will be paid for, even if it takes 1,000 years." 3 days later, Emily was dead. They said it was fever, but Catherine knew the truth. She had died of grief, of a broken heart, of refusing to live in a world without Jonathan, and since then, the curse began. Jack dropped the diary. He was crying. He didn't know when it had started, but tears streamed down his face. Uncontrollably. "Do you understand now?" Great Aunt Eleanor asked. "Do you understand what's happening?" "I am him," Jack whispered. "I am Jonathan Sterling from 1650, and Emily, the housekeeper. She's the princess. Yes, you've both returned. After almost 400 years, you've finally returned. And now, the question is, will you do things differently this time, or will you repeat the same mistake your family has been repeating for generations?" "What mistake?" Great Aunt Eleanor gripped her grandson's hand with surprising strength for her age. "Denial, running away, being afraid. Every generation of Sterling since 1650 has encountered someone like this, an inexplicable connection, a soul they recognized without knowing why. And every generation did the same thing, retreated, rationalized, chose the convenient over the true. And the curse continued, the unhappy marriages, the empty hearts, the wealth that never brings peace. And your husband, Great Aunt, my parents, they also—" "My husband loved me," Great Aunt Eleanor interrupted. "But there was another woman, a simple woman who worked on the neighboring plantation. He felt something for her that he never felt for me. I saw it in his eyes, but he chose the name, the status, the fortune. And he died unhappy, like your father, like all of them. But I'm not an enslaver now, and Emily isn't a princess anymore. The roles are reversed, exactly as she prophesied." "Exactly," Great Aunt Eleanor smiled. "Then maybe this is the chance to break the cycle. Maybe the universe is finally giving you both the opportunity to do things differently. The question is, do you have the courage?" Jack was silent for a long time. Everything he believed about the world, about himself, about reality, was being challenged. He was a practical man, a man of numbers and contracts, not of prophecies and curses, but the dreams, the visions, the crown-shaped birthmark, the diary from 1650, the identical name. It all fit together in a way that couldn't be coincidence. And there was something else, something he couldn't deny, even if he wanted to. From the moment he saw Emily kneeling on that marble floor, Jack Sterling knew that his life would never be the same. Knew he had found something he had been searching for a long time, maybe for entire lifetimes. The question wasn't whether he believed. The question was whether he had the courage to accept it. "I need to see her," he said finally. "I need to talk to her." Great Aunt Eleanor nodded. "But before that, there's one more thing you need to see. Something that will prove, once and for all, that this is real. Something that's been hidden in this estate for centuries. Something that I, myself, never had the courage to look for." "What?" "The cellar. The place where they were kept. The place where Jonathan was executed. It's all there still. The chains, the shackles. And they say there's something else too. Something that Catherine hid after their deaths. Something she didn't have the courage to destroy." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The cellar. The only part of the Sterling manor that was always locked. The only area that even the housekeepers were forbidden to clean. What did Catherine hide there? Great Aunt Eleanor lowered her eyes. The portrait. She commissioned a portrait of Emily before she died, in secret from her husband. She wanted to preserve the image of that extraordinary woman who had touched her life in a way she could never explain. And along with the portrait, she hid something else. Something that belonged to Jonathan. Something he wore when he died. Jack felt his heart race. What was it? A necklace with a crown-shaped pendant. He made it for Emily with his own hands. He was going to give it to her on the night of their escape. The symbol that she would always be his queen, even in a world that treated her as a slave. Jack stood up before he even realized what he was doing. "Where's the key to the cellar?" Great Aunt Eleanor smiled, a sad but hopeful smile. "In the chest," she said, "along with the diary. It's been waiting for almost 400 years. Maybe it's time to finally open that door. If you were in Jack's place, would you go down to the cellar, or would you be too afraid of what you might find down there? Comment your answer now, because what comes next is going to shock you. The staircase to the cellar was stone, ancient, worn by centuries of use. Jack descended each step, feeling the weight of history beneath his feet. The air grew colder with each step, denser, as if time itself were compressed in that underground space. When he reached the bottom of the stairs, he needed a moment for his eyes to adjust to the darkness. And then he saw it. The chains were still there, attached to the stone walls, rusted but intact, metal rings that once held human beings, as if they were animals, shackles that marked the wrists and ankles of people who committed the crime of having dark skin. Jack felt like vomiting. His fortune, his estate, his family name, all of it had been built on slavery, on suffering, on the deaths of people who deserved to live free. He always knew it, in theory. Every Southerner with a minimum of education knew the history of slavery. But it was one thing to read about it in books, another thing entirely to be in the place where it had happened, to touch the chains that once held an African princess, to breathe the air of a place where his ancestor was executed. After seeing all of this, some people are going to need to pause the video, need to process, and that's okay. What's being revealed here changes everything you thought about justice, karma, and the weight we carry from past lives. Jack walked through the cellar with hesitant steps. He was looking for the portrait. He was looking for the necklace. He was looking for any additional proof that all of this was real. And then he found it. Behind a false wall, hidden by a pile of old boxes, was a passage. Jack needed to use force to move the boxes, needed to tear away loose bricks, and when he finally opened enough space to enter, his breath caught in his throat. It was a small, secret room, maybe 10 feet by 10, and on the walls, covered in cobwebs and centuries of dust, were treasures that no money could buy. The portrait was there, exactly as Great-Aunt Eleanor had described. It was Emily, the Emily from 1650, painted in oil on canvas, with simple slave clothes but a queen's posture. Her eyes seemed alive, seemed to look directly at Jack across the centuries, and he recognized those eyes. They were the same eyes as Emily Santos, the housekeeper who cleaned his estate. The resemblance was absolute. It wasn't similar, it was identical, the same person, the same spirit, the same soul, just in different bodies, separated by almost 400 years. Jonathan Jack Sterling sank to his knees before the portrait. He couldn't pretend anymore. He couldn't rationalize. He couldn't deny what his eyes were seeing, what his heart was feeling, what his soul had always known. He was Sebastian. She was Emily. And somehow, impossibly, miraculously, terrifyingly, and beautifully, they had returned. But there was more in the secret chamber. On a weathered wooden table, inside an ivory box, was the necklace. The necklace that the first Sebastian had crafted with his own hands. The necklace with the crown-shaped pendant, the symbol of a love that transcended death. Jack picked up the necklace with trembling hands. The metal was darkened with age, but still intact. And the moment his fingers touched the pendant, it happened. The world disappeared. Jack was no longer in the cellar. He was in a field of sugarcane. The sun was scalding. His skin was covered in sweat. His back burned with recent scars. And his eyes were fixed on a woman working just yards away. Emily, she was dressed in slave's clothing. Her hair was tied up under a cloth. Her hands were bleeding from the rough labor. But when she looked up and saw him, a smile transformed her face. A smile that said everything. That said, "I love you." That said, "You are my reason for living." That said, "Wherever you are, that's where I want to be." Jack, or Sebastian, he no longer knew who he was, walked to her. He reached out his hand, touched her face, and the words came in a language he had never spoken, but that his soul had always known. "My queen, my life." my reason for existing. I swear by all that is sacred that I will set you free. I will take you far away from here. I will give you the life you deserve, or I will die trying." Emily took his hand and brought it to her lips. "I know you will," she said. "I know, because my soul recognizes yours. We were one soul that was divided into two bodies, and no matter what happens, no matter how much time passes, we will always find each other. In every life, in every world, for all of eternity." The vision shifted. Now Jack was in the central courtyard of the plantation. It was night, torches were lit, and he was kneeling on the ground, with his hands tied behind his back, looking at the man who held the whip. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that this was the night of the escape attempt. He knew that they had been captured. He knew he was going to die, and even so, even staring at death, his only thought was for Emily. Where was she? Was she safe? Would they hurt her too? Then he saw her, forced to watch, two hands holding her arms, tears streaming down her face, and he did the only thing he could do. He looked into her eyes, smiled, and said, in the calmest voice he could muster, "I will find you. In another life, in another body, in another time. I swear, and when I find you, the roles will be reversed. I will be free, you will be free, and we will finally be together, as we always should have been." The first crack of the whip tore across his back. Jack screamed. He didn't know if it was from physical pain or the pain of the memory. He didn't know if he was in the past or the present. He only knew that he was feeling everything, every strike, every cut, every moment of agony that his former self had experienced. And then, mercifully, the vision ended. Jack was back in the cellar, lying on the cold stone floor, the necklace still in his hand, and tears streaming down his face unstoppably. Now, he knew. He didn't believe. He didn't speculate. He knew with the absolute certainty of someone who had lived it. He was Sebastian. He had loved Emily. He had died for her. And now, almost 400 years later, he had the chance to fulfill the promise he had made. The roles were reversed, exactly as he had prophesied on that terrible night. He was rich. She was poor. He was free. She worked to survive. And the universe, in its perfect cosmic justice, was giving them the opportunity to rewrite history. But first, he needed to find her. He needed to look into her eyes. He needed to know if she also remembered, if she also felt it, if she was also waiting for him. Jack rose with difficulty. He put the necklace in his pocket. He left the cellar without looking back. He climbed the stairs in silence. And when he reached the main hall of Stirling Manor, he stopped. Emily was there, standing at the entrance of the estate, with a small suitcase in her hand, and a look that said she knew exactly why she had been called back before her leave was over. "You went down to the cellar," she said. "It wasn't a question. I went down, and you saw?" "I saw everything." Silence. A silence laden with centuries of waiting, of pain, of hope. Then Jack did something that no Stirling had done in 400 years. He walked to Emily. He knelt before her. He took the necklace out of his pocket and held it out to her. "This is yours," he said. "It always has been. I made it for you, almost 400 years ago. And now I'm finally giving it to you." Emily looked at the necklace, at the crown-shaped pendant, and tears began to stream down her face. "You remember?" she whispered. "I remember everything. Of you working in the field, of you smiling at me, of you holding my hand on the last night before the escape, of you crying while they watched me die. I remember every second, and I remember the promise I made." "What promise?" Jack raised his eyes and met hers. The same eyes, the same soul, the same love that had survived death, time, and the injustice of a world that treated human beings as property. "I promised that I would find you, that when I found you, the roles would be reversed, and that we could finally be together. Look at us now, Emily. Look where we are. I am rich. You are poor. I am free. You work on your knees. The roles are exactly reversed. And now the only question that remains is, do you want me to keep that promise? Do you want to be with me? Not as a housekeeper, not as an employee, as an equal, as my queen, as it always should have been. If you haven't felt chills yet, comment chills so I know you're keeping up. Because what comes next is even more intense. Emily didn't answer immediately. She took the necklace, ran her fingers over the pendant, and for a long moment she remained silent. Then she spoke, and her words changed everything. I always knew, she said. Since I was a child, I had dreams. Dreams of a life that wasn't mine, with a man who loved me more than his own life, with a promise made under the moonlight. When Jonathan Jack Sterling first laid eyes on Emily, there in the kitchen of Sterling Manor, as she was kneeling on the marble floor, scrubbing away, something inside him shattered, but in a way he'd never anticipated. It wasn't just pity, it wasn't merely discomfort, it was something far deeper, almost primal. It was as if a part of his soul, dormant for centuries, suddenly awoke. A voice, not his own, whispered, barely audibly, I finally found you, my queen. But when he'd seen her for the very first time, in that kitchen, when she'd held his hand, he knew he'd finally found her. He knew his waiting was over. He knew that everything he'd been through, all the setbacks, all the struggles, all the pain had been leading him to this, to her. But then, why didn't you say anything, Jack? Emily asked. Why did you pretend you didn't know? Because he was afraid. Emily, Jack confessed, afraid he was losing his mind, afraid of being rejected, afraid that he, Jonathan Sterling, would be just like the others in her eyes. You're a billionaire, Jack, Emily continued. You could have any woman in the world. Why would you choose a housekeeper with a 4-year-old son? Why would you ever believe in a love story that stretches across centuries? Because that story is the only thing I do believe in, Jack responded, his voice ringing with conviction. Because all the money in the world can't buy what I feel when I look at you. Because I spent 38 years searching for something without even knowing what it was. And when I saw you on your knees on that marble floor, I found it. I found you. I found my queen. I found the reason my soul couldn't rest. He rose to his feet, standing directly in front of her, so close that he could almost get lost in the alluring scent of her perfume. I don't know how this works, he admitted. I can't explain how two people can find each other again. After dying, I don't know if it's magic or science or the will of God. But I know that this is real. I know it because my heart beats differently when you're near. I know it because my soul screams your name even when my mouth is silent. I know it because every cell in my body recognizes you as the person I've searched for all of eternity. Emily raised her hand and gently touched his face, her eyes welling with unshed tears. I know it too, she whispered. I've always known it. From the very first time I dreamed of you, from the very first time I felt the pain of our separation in 1650, without understanding what it meant, from the very first time I looked at the mark on the back of my neck and felt that it was more than just a simple birthmark. The mark, Jack breathed, the crown mark. Emily turned her back and swept her hair aside. There it was, the mark that identified her as a princess. A mark that had transcended centuries. The mark that was physical proof that some things truly do transcend death. Jonathan touched the mark with reverence, and the moment his fingers made contact with her skin, it happened again. Another vision. But this time, they saw it together. They were in a lavish chamber, stone walls, richly colored rugs, music drifting in from afar. And Emily, the Emily of 1650, was dressed as the royalty she was. An elaborate gown, gold jewelry, and a crown upon her head. This was my life. The voice of the present-day Emily echoed through the vision. Before I was captured, before I became a slave, I was the daughter of the king. I was next in line to the throne. I was going to rule my people. Jack watched the young princess, giving orders to her servants. He saw the advisors treating her with reverence. He saw the power and the dignity that she carried so effortlessly. And then the vision shifted to the slave ship, to the unspeakable horrors of the journey, to the moment when a princess was reduced to mere merchandise. I lost everything, Emily's voice continued, thick with emotion. My family, my throne, my freedom, my very humanity. But I never lost one thing, the certainty of who I was, the dignity that no whip could ever strip away, and the dream that one day, somehow, justice would be served. The vision faded. Jack and Emily were back in the hall of Stirling Manor, gazing into each other's eyes, both with tears streaming down their faces, both trembling with the intensity of what they had just shared. Justice has been served, Jack said, his voice filled with emotion. You've come back, I've come back, and now we have a chance to live what we were denied. But it's different now, Emily countered. In our past life, you were a slave like me. Now, you're the master. You have all the power. I have nothing. If I agree to be with you, people will say that I'm a gold digger, that I'm after your money, that I'm taking advantage of the situation. Let them talk, Jack replied without hesitation, his jaw set with determination. Let them say whatever they want. I already lost you once. I already died without being able to protect you. I've already spent 400 years waiting for this chance. Do you think I care what other people will think? And your world, Jack, your society, your family. What will Great-Aunt Eleanor say? Great-Aunt Eleanor will say, "Finally," Jack retorted with a wry smile. She spent her entire life waiting for a Stirling to have the courage to break the cycle. She knew about you, she knew about us, and she wants more than anything for me to do things differently. And your world, your businesses, your friends. My world is empty without you. My businesses mean nothing if I continue to live alone. And my friends, well, the true ones will understand. The fake ones will go away, and I'll know who's who. Emily remained silent for a long moment. Jack could see the struggle in her eyes. Hope battling fear, love fighting against practicality, an ancient soul wrestling with modern-day worries. And then she made a decision. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But not here, not in this manner. At least, not yet. Jack frowned, confused. What do you mean? This manor was built on blood, Jack, Emily explained, her voice shaking with emotion. On the suffering of my people, on the death of the first Jonathan Stirling. If we're going to do things differently this time, if we're really going to break the cycle, we need to transform this place. We need to give it a new purpose. What purpose? Emily looked around, at the centuries-old walls, at the portraits of the Stirling family, at the marble floor she herself had scrubbed on her knees. A memorial, she said, a newfound steel in her voice. I want to transform the cellar into a memorial to the slaves who suffered here. I want people to see the chains. I want them to read the history. I want them to know what happened. And I want them to learn so that it never happens again. Jack was silent for a long moment. Emily's proposal was radical. It meant opening his family's darkest history to the public. It meant admitting that his fortune was built on slavery. It meant facing the judgment of everyone he knew. But it also meant honoring the memory of Jonathan and Emily of 1650. It meant giving meaning to their tragedy. It meant doing what no one in the Stirling family had ever had the courage to do. Yes, he said finally, his voice firm with resolve. You're right. It's the least we can do. Emily smiled, a smile of relief, of hope. of love. And there's one more thing, she said, her eyes locking with his. My son, Ethan. He's part of this. He's part of use. If you want to be with me, you need to accept him too. Jack thought of the 4-year-old boy, the child who had never known his father, the difficult life he had led so far. And then he thought of something Great Aunt Eleanor had said, about the curse, about no Sterling having sons who inherited the name, about the lineage that seemed doomed. He looked into Emily's eyes and saw a future he hadn't dared to imagine, a future filled with love, with family, with purpose. Ethan is more than welcome, Jack said softly, his voice full of emotion. He is part of this now. He's part of US. What if Ethan was also a part of this? What if he was the next generation of the promise, the continuation of the story that began back in 1650? Bring him here, Jonathan declared. Bring Ethan to live at Sterling Manor. He'll have everything he needs. A top-notch school, security, a family, and perhaps more importantly, a history. The story of where he comes from, of his true ancestors, of how cosmic justice ultimately works. Are you sure about this, Jack? Emily asked, her voice laced with a hint of disbelief. You barely know me, barely know my son, and you're offering us all of this. Jonathan met her gaze, a profound understanding in his eyes. I've known you for 400 years, Emily, he stated with unwavering conviction. I know your soul. I know your heart. I know the woman you were when you were a princess, and I know the woman you are now, scrubbing floors just to survive. And in every version of you, in every century, you are the most extraordinary person I have ever encountered. So yes, I am sure, more sure than I've ever been of anything in my life. Emily didn't say another word. She simply closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around his neck. For the first time in 4 centuries, they embraced, not as employer and housekeeper, not as rich and poor, but as 2 souls who had finally found each other again after an impossible journey through time. This story shouldn't exist. It shouldn't even be possible. But here it is, happening right before our very eyes. And if you're still watching this, all the way to this point, it means that in some way, it resonates with you. It means that maybe, just maybe, you also have someone out there who's waiting to reconnect with you. In the following weeks, everything changed. Jonathan called a press conference. In front of journalists from across the South, he announced the discovery of the cellar beneath Sterling Manor. He showcased the chains, read excerpts from Catherine's diary, and revealed the story of Princess Emily and the enslaved Jonathan, who had been executed there nearly 400 years ago. The reaction was mixed. Some praised him for his courage in confronting the past. Others criticized him for airing the family's shame, and a select few, those who truly understood, saw something far more profound in his actions. They saw a man trying to make peace with history. They saw a family attempting to break a curse. They saw the first step towards a healing that would take generations to complete. The cellar was transformed into a memorial. Architects, historians, and descendants of enslaved people worked together to create a space for remembrance and reflection. The chains were preserved, explanatory plaques were installed, and at the center of it all, in a place of honor, was placed the portrait of Emily, the African princess who never lost her dignity. Great Aunt Eleanor lived to see the inauguration. At 93 years old, in a wheelchair, she cut the ribbon that opened the memorial to the public. And in her opening remarks, she said something that no one forgot. This estate was built on tears, on blood, on the cruelty of men who treated other men as animals. My family has carried this guilt for generations. But today, finally, we begin to repay the debt, not with money, not with empty words, but with the truth, with memory, and with the promise that we will never allow this to happen again. She passed away 2 months later, at peace, knowing that the cycle had finally been broken. Jonathan and Emily were married in a simple ceremony in the garden of Stirling Manor. There was no guest list of high society, no social columns, just their true friends, the staff of the house who had become family, and Ethan, the 4-year-old boy who now had a father. The necklace with the crown pendant was the wedding gift. Jonathan placed it around Emily's neck at the altar, fulfilling the promise he had made nearly 400 years ago. And when the two exchanged vows, the words they spoke were not written by any officiant. They were the same words they had spoken to each other in 1650, on the last night before their escape, under the moonlight, with their hearts full of hope and their future full of danger. I am yours, you are mine, in this life and in all that are to come, until the last sun fades and the universe returns to silence. Our souls are one, and nothing, not death, not time, not the injustice of men, will ever separate us. The years passed. Ethan grew up. He learned the history of Stirling Manor. He learned about the enslaved people who worked there. He learned about Princess Emily and the enslaved Jonathan. And he learned that justice, even when it takes centuries, always finds a way. At 10 years old, he asked a question that Jonathan never forgot. Dad, if you were a slave in the other life, and Mom was a princess, does that mean I also lived back then? Jonathan looked at Emily. She smiled and nodded. We don't know for sure, Ethan, Jonathan replied gently, but there's a theory, a possibility that your great-aunt Eleanor mentioned before she passed. She thought that you might be the reincarnation of a child who was never born, the son that Emily and Jonathan would have had if they hadn't been captured, the next generation of the promise. So I'm like a continuation of the story? In a way, yes. You're proof that their love survived, that the promise was fulfilled, that after 400 years, they finally managed to be together and have the family they always wanted. Ethan thought for a moment. Then he smiled. That's pretty cool, he said. Like a movie, but for real. Jonathan chuckled and ruffled the boy's hair. Yes, it is exactly like a movie, but for real, and you're a part of it. Years later, when Jonathan already had gray hair, and Emily still maintained the queenly poise that no amount of time could erase, they received an unexpected visit. It was a historian, a university professor specializing in the history of the South. She had spent decades researching the records of the slave trade, and she had found something extraordinary. Documents from West Africa, royal records, the story of a princess named Emily, daughter of King Obafemi, who had been captured by slavers in 1648 and sold to Portuguese traders, and along with the documents, a miniature. A small portrait painted on ivory showing the princess before she was captured. Jonathan and Emily looked at the miniature, and they saw exactly what they expected to see. It was Emily, the same Emily from the portrait in the cellar, the same Emily who was sitting next to Jonathan at that moment. The same face, the same expression, the same unshakable dignity. The historian was in shock. The resemblance is impossible, she said, her voice trembling. You could be a direct descendant. You could be a distant relative, but I have never seen anything like this. It's as if you are her. Emily smiled, a mysterious smile, a smile that held secrets of centuries. Maybe I am, she said softly. Some things can't be explained by science. Some connections transcend logic, and some loves, well, some loves simply never die, no matter how many centuries pass. The historian left, both confused, but also fascinated. And years later, when she published her book about slavery in the South, she included an entire chapter about Princess Emily and the Stirling family, about the chains in the cellar, about the memorial, and about the strange coincidence of a housekeeper with the same name and the same face as a princess from 4 centuries ago. The book became a bestseller. The story of Stirling Manor became famous, and thousands of people from all over the world came to visit the memorial, came to see the chains, came to read Catherine's diary, came to understand how humanity can be so cruel and also so capable of redemption. And in the guest book, among thousands of comments, one in particular caught her attention. "I always knew that there was something more. I always felt that I had lived before. I always looked for someone without knowing who. After visiting this place, after reading this story, I finally understand. We are not just who we are born to be. We are everyone we ever were. And love, true love, transcends everything. Death, time, injustice. Thank you for showing me that miracles exist." Jack read that comment to Emily. On a stormy night, rain lashed against the windows of Stirling Manor, thunder echoed in the distance, and they were sitting together on the sofa in the library as they had done every night for decades. "Do you think we made a difference?" Jack asked. "Do you think we broke the cycle for real?" Emily touched the necklace at her throat, the crown pendant that Jack had made with his own hands almost 400 years ago. "I think we did more than that," she replied. "I think we proved that cosmic justice exists, that promises made with the heart are kept, that no matter how much time passes, love finds a way." "And if we had to do it all again," Jack asked, "in another life, in another century, would you?" Emily smiled, the same smile she had smiled at him in the cotton fields in 1650, the same smile she had smiled at him in the hall of the manor when he knelt and offered her the necklace. The same smile. That was his reason for existing. "I would, 1,000 times," she said, "1,000,000 times, however many lives it takes, because you are my soul and I am yours, and that doesn't change. It will never change, not even if the entire universe ends and begins again." Jack kissed her, a kiss that contained centuries of longing, decades of waiting, and the absolute certainty that some things are destined to happen. Outside the manor, the storm continued. Lightning illuminated the sky. Thunder shook the ancient walls, but inside that library, inside that embrace, there was only peace. The peace of those who had finally found what they were looking for. The peace of those who had fulfilled an impossible promise. The peace of those who had proven that love is stronger than death. And in the cellar, transformed into a memorial, the chains that once held slaves now told a different story. No longer of suffering, no longer of injustice, but of redemption, of transformation, of hope. Because that's what true love does. It transforms prisons into memorials. It transforms pain into learning. It transforms curses into blessings. And it travels through time. Have you ever felt an unexplainable connection with someone? Have you ever looked into the eyes of a stranger and felt like you knew them from another life? Have you ever had a dream so vivid that it felt like a memory? If the answer is yes, maybe this story is for you. Maybe you also have someone out there waiting to find you again. Someone who made a promise centuries ago. Someone whose soul is the other half of yours. Don't give up looking. Don't let fear stop you. Don't let logic convince you that it's impossible. Because if Jack and Emily taught the world anything, it's this. Miracles exist. Love transcends death. And some promises, even if they take 400 years, are always kept. And you, what's your story of an impossible connection? What's the love you've been searching for lifetimes? Comment down below. I want to know. I need to know, because every story deserves to be told, and every soul deserves to find its other half. Until next time, and remember, the universe always finds a way.